"I'm so tired of being without a man," said the Apache woman to the lone rancher. The land where the story begins was wide and quiet, stretching farther than the eye could see. Dry grass moved slowly under the wind, and the mountains stood in the distance like silent watchers. This was ranch country, where days started before sunrise and ended after dark. Life here was not easy, but it was honest. The rancher lived alone on his land. People in nearby towns knew him as a quiet man who kept to himself. He woke every morning before the sun, pulled on worn boots, and stepped outside to greet the day without complaint. His house was small and plain, built more for use than comfort. Inside, everything had a place. There were no extra decorations, no signs of a family. Just a man, his work, and the land he took care of. He had learned long ago not to expect much from life. Loss had shaped him, though he did not talk about it. Years earlier, people he cared about had left, some by choice, some by fate. Since then, he had chosen silence over hope. He worked hard, paid his dues, and asked for nothing in return. Loneliness was something he carried like an old injury. It hurt sometimes, but he had learned to live with it. Not far from his ranch, beyond a stretch of dirt road and open land, lived an Apache woman. She belonged to a community that valued strength, memory, and tradition. Her life had been filled with responsibility since she was young. She had helped raise younger relatives, supported elders, and carried her share of the family's burdens without complaint. People respected her for her resilience, but few truly knew how tired she was. She lived in a modest home near her people. The land around her held stories older than any fence or building. She felt connected to it in a way that went deeper than ownership. This land carried her ancestors' footsteps, their struggles, and their survival. She honored that history every day through her actions, even when life weighed heavily on her. Like the rancher, she had learned to stand alone. Relationships in her past had not lasted. Some ended because of misunderstanding, others because of fear, and some because the men simply were not ready to walk beside a strong woman. Over time, she stopped expecting support. She did what needed to be done and kept moving forward, but strength did not erase loneliness. It only hid it. Their worlds existed close together, but they rarely crossed. When they did, it was usually brief and polite. A nod at the supply store, a short greeting near the road, nothing more. Still, both noticed each other in small ways. The rancher noticed how she carried herself, steady and calm, even when tired. The woman noticed how he never spoke more than necessary, yet always listened carefully. One afternoon, a simple situation brought them into a longer conversation. The rancher had driven into town for supplies. As he was loading feed into his truck, he saw her struggling with heavy bags on her own. Without thinking, he walked over and offered help. His voice was quiet, respectful, and without any expectation. She hesitated for a moment, then nodded. They worked side by side in silence at first. The sun was hot and dust clung to everything. When the work was done, she thanked him. He nodded again, ready to leave, but she spoke one more sentence, casual but sincere. She asked how the cattle were doing this season. It was a small question, but it opened the door to conversation. They stood there longer than either expected. They talked about the weather, the land, and how hard it had become to make a living from it. The conversation was simple, but it felt different. There was no pressure, no need to impress. Just two people sharing a moment of honesty. The rancher was surprised by how easy it felt to talk to her. He was used to keeping words inside, but with her, silence did not feel uncomfortable. When he did speak, she listened fully, not interrupting or judging. That alone made him feel seen in a way he had not felt for years. The woman noticed something too. He did not look at her with pity or curiosity. There was no sense that he was trying to change her or understand her culture as something distant. He simply treated her as a person. That respect mattered more to her than grand gestures ever could. As the days passed, they ran into each other more often. Sometimes it was planned, sometimes by chance. A stop along the road, a shared moment at the local store. Each interaction added a small layer of familiarity. They began to recognize each other's routines, the times they were likely to cross paths. Still, neither rushed anything. Both had learned the cost of moving too fast. The rancher feared hope. The woman feared disappointment. So they let the connection grow slowly without naming it. One evening near sunset, they found themselves talking again, this time near the edge of the land where the ranch met open ground. The sky was painted with soft colors, and the air was cooler. The day's work showed on both of them, tired hands, quiet eyes. The woman spoke more than usual that evening. She talked about her responsibilities, her family, and how the days often felt long. The rancher listened, leaning against his truck, hands folded, eyes steady. He did not interrupt or try to fix anything. He just stayed present. Then she said the words that surprised even herself. She spoke quietly, without drama, but with deep honesty. She admitted how tired she was, not just from work, but from always being strong alone. From carrying everything without a partner to lean on. From waking up each day knowing she had no one to share the weight with. The words hung in the air. The rancher did not answer right away. He felt the truth of what she said because it matched something inside him. He had lived his life the same way, quiet, alone, and careful not to need anyone. Instead of responding with advice or promises, he simply acknowledged her feelings. He told her he understood more than she might think. That simple response changed the moment. There was no solution offered, no commitment made, just shared understanding. As the sun dipped below the horizon, both felt something shift, not a dramatic change but a subtle one, a recognition that they were no longer strangers, that their loneliness was not unique, that perhaps without planning it they had found someone who could see them clearly. They parted that evening as they always had, with calm words and no expectations. But the silence that followed was different. It was filled with thought, not emptiness. Both carried the conversation home with them, replaying the words and the feeling they left behind. That night, the rancher lay awake longer than usual. The house felt quieter than ever, but not in the same painful way. For the first time in years, the silence held possibility. Across the land, the Apache woman also sat awake, reflecting on her honesty and the calm way it had been received. Neither knew what would come next. There were no promises, no plans. Only the knowledge that something real had begun, not with romance or excitement, but with truth, respect, and the courage to speak from the heart. And that was how their story truly started. The days after that evening felt different for both of them, even though nothing on the surface had changed. The sun still rose the same way, the wind still moved across the land, and work still demanded their full attention. Yet inside, something had shifted. Thoughts came more easily, and silence no longer felt as heavy as before. The rancher found himself thinking about her during the day. While repairing fences or checking on the animals, his mind drifted back to the calm way she had spoken and the honesty in her voice. He was not used to letting his thoughts wander toward another person. For years, he had trained himself to focus only on work. It was safer that way. Feelings led to expectations, and expectations often led to loss. Still, no matter how much he tried, her words stayed with him. He noticed small things he had ignored before. The quiet beauty of the land at dusk, the sound of wind through dry grass. These things had always been there, but now they seemed sharper, more alive. It was as if sharing that moment with her had reopened a part of him he had closed long ago. The Apache woman felt the change too. She went about her daily responsibilities as she always had, helping family members, handling tasks that others depended on her to do. On the outside, she was the same strong woman everyone knew, but inside her thoughts were restless. She replayed the conversation again and again, not with regret but with curiosity. She had spoken her truth without fear that evening, and for the first time, it had not been met with silence or misunderstanding. He had not tried to change the subject or offer empty comfort. He had simply listened. That mattered more to her than she could easily explain. It made her feel respected, not judged. In the days that followed, they crossed paths more often, though neither of them admitted they were making the effort. The rancher planned his supply trips a little differently. The woman found reasons to be in town when she knew he might be there. When they met, their conversations were still simple, but they lasted longer. They talked about everyday things at first: weather patterns, how hard the year had been on crops and livestock, the rising costs of supplies. These were safe topics, but even within them there was comfort. They were learning each other's rhythms, the way one paused before speaking, the way the other smiled slightly when listening. One afternoon, they shared a cup of coffee outside a small local place. The air was warm and the town moved slowly around them. There was no rush. The rancher spoke about his childhood, something he rarely did. He talked about growing up learning responsibility early, about working with his hands, and about how he had learned to depend on himself. He did not share painful details, but the weight of his experiences was clear. The woman listened closely, not interrupting, not pushing him to say more than he was ready to say. Her presence made it easier for him to speak. He realized he felt no pressure to impress her. That was new and unexpected. She shared parts of her own life too. She spoke about her culture, not as a lesson, but as something deeply personal. She explained how community mattered, how elders were respected, and how strength was often quiet rather than loud. She talked about responsibility, about being someone others relied on, even when she herself felt tired. The rancher listened with genuine interest. He did not treat her words as something distant or unfamiliar. He saw them as part of who she was. That simple acceptance created a sense of trust between them, one that grew naturally rather than being forced. As their connection deepened, both became aware of their fears. The rancher worried about letting someone close again. He had built his life around independence, and the idea of change unsettled him. What if he was not enough? What if he disappointed her without meaning to? The woman carried her own concerns. She knew how quickly others judged what they did not understand. She had seen relationships fail under the weight of outside opinions. She wondered if he was ready for the reality of her life, her culture, and the expectations that came with it. Despite these doubts, neither pulled away. Instead, they moved forward slowly, step by step. Trust was not built through grand promises but through consistency, showing up, listening, respecting boundaries. One evening, the rancher invited her to sit near the edge of his land where the view opened wide. He did not frame it as a special occasion. He simply asked if she would like to come by after her work was done. She agreed, feeling calm rather than nervous. They sat together as the sky changed colors, sharing quiet moments between conversation. He offered her a simple meal, prepared without fuss. She appreciated the effort, not because it was impressive, but because it was sincere. They spoke about small memories, about moments in their lives that had shaped them. At one point, silence settled between them. It was not uncomfortable. The woman broke it by asking him why he had chosen to live alone for so long. The question was gentle, not demanding. He took his time answering. He admitted that loneliness had become familiar. That after losing people he cared about, he had decided it was safer not to need anyone. He said he was not proud of it, but it was how he had survived. Saying it out loud felt strange, but also freeing. She did not try to change his mind. She told him that she understood the need to protect oneself. She shared that she, too, had learned to rely only on herself. That strength had kept her going, but it had also made the days feel longer. As the night grew darker, both felt closer, though no promises were made. Their connection was built on honesty, not urgency. They parted that evening with a sense of mutual respect and understanding. In the days that followed, challenges began to surface. Small comments from others, curious looks, questions that carried judgment beneath polite words. The woman was used to this and handled it with calm dignity. The rancher, however, struggled more. He was not accustomed to attention or scrutiny. She noticed his discomfort and spoke to him about it openly. She explained that standing together meant accepting that not everyone would understand. She told him she did not expect him to change who he was, only to be honest with himself about what he wanted. That conversation stayed with him. He realized that for the first time in years, he was being asked not to give more, but to be present. That realization eased his fear. By the end of this part of their journey, they were no longer just two people sharing conversations. They had become companions in the quiet sense of the word. They trusted each other enough to speak honestly and to listen without judgment. They did not know where the path would lead. There were still uncertainties ahead, still fears to face. But they had taken an important step. They had allowed themselves to care, cautiously and respectfully, and for both of them, that was something new. The bond between the rancher and the Apache woman continued to grow, but it was not without its challenges. Life in the country demanded attention, and each carried personal fears that weighed heavily on their hearts. The rancher was no stranger to solitude. Years of living alone had made him cautious, wary of letting anyone close. He had built walls around himself, brick by brick, hoping to avoid disappointment or pain. Yet, the more he spent time with the woman, the more he realized that these walls, once protective, were now isolating him from something real and meaningful. The Apache woman, too, faced her own concerns. She had learned early on to be strong and independent. Her life was filled with responsibilities, caring for family members, honoring traditions, and maintaining her place in the community. She had faced challenges that many people would find overwhelming, and she had handled them with resilience. But beneath that strength, there was a vulnerability that few saw. She feared that her past experiences might make it difficult for someone else to truly understand her. She feared judgment, misunderstanding, and ultimately loss. Despite these fears, they continued to meet, each encounter strengthening their connection. Sometimes it was a brief chat in town, sometimes a longer conversation on the edge of the rancher's land. They shared stories about their lives, speaking carefully but honestly. The rancher spoke of his childhood, the hardships he faced, and the lessons he had learned from working the land. The woman spoke of her heritage, her family, and the strength she had gained from facing life's challenges head-on. In sharing these stories, they began to see each other not just as individuals, but as people shaped by experience and resilience. The rancher noticed her patience, the way she listened carefully and responded thoughtfully. The woman noticed his quiet strength, the way he approached life with steady determination. There was a growing understanding between them, a recognition that each had endured hardships that the other could appreciate. As trust grew, so did their willingness to share more personal thoughts. One evening, as the sun dipped behind the hills and the sky turned a soft orange, they found themselves sitting together near the rancher's barn. The air was calm, and the land stretched quietly before them. The woman spoke about her fears of being misunderstood and the challenges of balancing independence with the desire for companionship. She admitted that, while she valued her strength, there were moments when she longed for someone to share the burden of life with. The rancher listened closely, not offering advice or solutions, but simply acknowledging her feelings. He shared that he, too, had feared opening up, fearing that letting someone in would lead to disappointment. For the first time, he spoke not as a man hiding behind work, but as someone willing to show vulnerability. The woman felt a quiet relief in hearing this. It was as if their shared honesty created a space where they could be themselves without judgment. Their growing closeness did not go unnoticed. In a small community, people often talk, and their interactions began to draw attention. Some observed with curiosity, others with subtle disapproval. The woman, however, remained calm. She was used to scrutiny and had learned to stand firm in her choices. She encouraged the rancher to do the same, reminding him that their connection was not for others to judge, but for them to nurture. One day, a problem arose on the ranch. A sudden storm had damaged part of the fencing, threatening the safety of the livestock. The rancher faced a difficult decision: repair the fence immediately alone or accept help. He knew the work was challenging, but he also knew that the woman had experience and skills that could be invaluable. Hesitating only briefly, he asked her to help. Together, they worked through the storm's aftermath. Their hands were busy, their minds focused, but there was an unspoken understanding between them. Each move was coordinated, each task shared. The rancher realized that working together was not a sign of weakness, but of trust and respect. The woman saw in him a partner willing to rely on someone else, a rare quality that deepened her admiration. After the work was done, they sat together on a nearby hill, watching the sun set and the sky change colors. They were tired, their clothes dirty, but there was a quiet satisfaction in having faced a challenge together. In that moment, both felt a sense of companionship that neither had expected. It was not dramatic or romantic in a storybook way, but it was real. It was built on shared effort, mutual respect, and an understanding of each other's strengths and weaknesses. As days turned into weeks, their connection strengthened further. They began to anticipate each other's needs, offering support before it was requested. The rancher would leave small supplies for her when he went to town, knowing she might need them. The woman would prepare meals or help with minor repairs on the ranch without making a fuss. These small gestures, simple and practical, spoke volumes about their growing bond. Yet challenges remained. Both were still cautious, aware that life could be unpredictable. The rancher worried about exposing his heart too soon, while the woman remained mindful of her responsibilities and community expectations. They had to navigate these concerns carefully, balancing honesty with patience. They learned to communicate openly, sharing fears and concerns rather than letting them fester. One evening, the woman invited the rancher to a community gathering. It was a casual event, a chance for neighbors and friends to meet and share stories. He felt nervous, unsure how he would be received. The woman reassured him quietly, emphasizing that he did not need to change or impress anyone. His presence alone was enough. At the gathering, they stood side by side, supporting each other without words. The rancher saw the respect others had for her, and he felt proud to be near someone of such strength and integrity. The woman saw his quiet confidence, the way he observed and listened, and felt reassured that he was someone she could trust. Their bond was visible, not through overt gestures but through subtle actions, a shared glance, a gentle nod, a reassuring smile. Over time, they began to envision a future together, not in grand fantasies, but in practical, everyday terms. They discussed how they could support each other while maintaining their independence. They shared hopes and small dreams, repairing the barn together, planting a garden, spending quiet evenings watching the land. These were not lofty ambitions, but they were meaningful. They represented a life built on partnership, trust, and mutual respect. By the end of this period, the rancher and the woman had moved from tentative acquaintances to true companions. Their connection was no longer just about conversation or shared tasks. It was about understanding, patience, and acceptance. Each had faced personal fears and doubts, and together they had begun to overcome them. They did not yet know what the future held. There were still obstacles, uncertainties, and challenges ahead. But they had taken the most important step, allowing themselves to trust and care for another person without losing themselves in the process. It was a delicate balance, one they navigated carefully, learning more about each other and themselves every day. And so, in the quiet of the countryside, amidst the challenges of work, tradition, and life itself, a bond was forming, one built on honesty, patience, and the courage to face fears together. It was not dramatic, but it was real. It was the kind of connection that could withstand time, hardship, and the judgment of others. In each other they had found not perfection, but understanding, respect, and the first glimmers of a shared life. This was the stage of their story where trust was tested, fears were faced, and a partnership began to take root. A slow, steady growth that promised something meaningful, even if neither could yet name it fully. The rancher and the Apache woman had grown closer over the past weeks, their bond strengthened by trust, patience, and shared experiences. Yet life in their part of the world was never easy, and soon they would face a test that would show the true depth of their connection. It was a quiet morning when the challenge began, but its effects would ripple through both of their lives in ways they could not yet imagine. The rancher had been checking the fences when he noticed something troubling. One section of the boundary, weakened by time and weather, had begun to collapse. If not repaired quickly, the livestock could escape, putting the rancher's work and livelihood at risk. He knew he could fix it alone, but the task was larger than he could manage safely by himself. He hesitated, then thought of the Apache woman. She had proven herself capable in many ways, and he knew that asking for her help would not be a sign of weakness, but a necessary choice. When he spoke to her about the situation, she did not hesitate. Without complaint, she gathered tools, rope, and wood and followed him to the fence. As they worked side by side, each action was coordinated and precise. They had developed a rhythm through their previous tasks together. The rancher would hold a beam steady while she tied it securely. She would measure and cut while he prepared the next section. The work was hard, and the sun bore down on them, but they moved steadily, driven by purpose and mutual trust. As the hours passed, the rancher noticed something in himself he had not felt for a long time, a sense of relief in being able to rely on someone. He realized that strength was not always about handling everything alone. There was power in partnership, in shared effort, and in mutual respect. The woman, too, felt a quiet satisfaction. She had spent years relying only on herself, and yet here was someone she could depend on, someone who valued her skills and judgment. By late afternoon, the fence was repaired. The livestock was safe, and the work was complete. They stepped back and surveyed their efforts. Sweat coated their faces, dust covered their clothes, but there was a shared pride in the accomplishment. They had faced a challenge together and succeeded, not as separate individuals, but as a team. The experience left them feeling closer, their respect and admiration for each other deepened. Yet life was never without complications. Word of their growing connection reached others in the community. Some people observed quietly, curious or suspicious of the bond between a rancher and an Apache woman. Small whispers and sideways glances followed them. The woman, accustomed to scrutiny, remained calm. She had learned that judgment from others was rarely productive. She spoke gently to the rancher about it, reminding him that their relationship was their own, not for the approval of outsiders. The rancher listened and took her words to heart. He realized that standing together meant accepting both the praise and the criticism that came with it. He did not need to prove himself to anyone else. What mattered was their honesty, trust, and commitment to support one another in practical ways. That evening, as they sat on a hill overlooking the land, they spoke openly about the future. The conversation was cautious but honest. They discussed how they could continue working side by side while maintaining their independence. The rancher shared his concerns about public opinion and the challenges of changing a life long accustomed to solitude. The woman spoke about her responsibilities, the need to respect her culture, and the importance of community. Together, they considered solutions that honored both of their needs, finding balance in practical plans rather than grand gestures. Soon after, An unexpected event tested their bond even further. A neighbor's cattle had wandered near the edge of their property, creating tension and potential conflict. The rancher and the woman acted swiftly, coordinating with the neighbor and carefully guiding the animals back. It was a delicate situation, requiring patience, communication, and clear thinking. Each relied on the other, knowing that mistakes could have serious consequences. Through calm cooperation, they managed to resolve the issue without confrontation. The experience left them both reflecting on the importance of trust and partnership. The rancher realized that he was capable of more than he had believed, particularly when supported by someone who understood him. The woman saw the depth of his integrity and reliability, recognizing that he could be counted on not only for work but for life's challenges as well. Their bond was no longer simply a matter of shared conversation, it was proven in action. In the days that followed, they continued to face ordinary challenges together, repairing fences, tending livestock, and preparing for the changing seasons. Each task, though simple in itself, became a demonstration of their growing partnership. The rancher began to see life differently, appreciating that vulnerability and trust did not weaken him but strengthened his connection to another person. The woman, too, felt the quiet joy of having someone beside her who could share the burden she had carried alone for so long. Their connection also deepened through small, everyday gestures. The rancher would prepare extra food when he knew she had a long day. She would repair tools or help organize supplies for him without fanfare. They communicated through actions as much as words, understanding that care was often shown in practical ways. These moments were simple, yet they carried profound significance, reinforcing the bond they were building. One evening, after completing a long day of work, they sat together on a porch overlooking the open fields. The sky was painted with soft colors as the sun set behind the mountains. They did not speak immediately, letting the quiet envelop them. Then the woman shared her thoughts about their journey, the trust they had built, the fears they had faced, and the subtle, steady growth of their connection. The rancher listened, feeling a sense of gratitude and calm he had not known in years. They spoke about the future carefully. There were no grand declarations, no unrealistic promises. Instead, they discussed practical ways to support each other, ways to navigate challenges, and ways to maintain honesty and respect in all interactions. Each conversation, measured and thoughtful, reinforced their commitment to one another, not in dramatic gestures, but in steady, reliable presence. The test of standing together had shown them both what was possible. The rancher discovered that companionship could coexist with independence, and that sharing responsibility did not diminish his strength. The woman realized that trusting someone else did not mean losing herself or compromising her values. They learned that partnership was not about perfection, but about mutual support, patience, and understanding. By the end of this part of their story, their connection had grown stronger than ever. They had faced challenges together, both practical and social, and emerged with a deeper understanding of each other. Their bond was no longer tentative, it was proven, tested, and resilient. They knew there would still be difficulties ahead, but they had taken a significant step in building a life together based on trust, respect, and shared effort. In the quiet of the countryside, as evening settled over the land, they sat side by side, not needing words to fill the space. The rancher felt a sense of peace in being able to rely on another person, and the woman felt a sense of relief in knowing she was not alone. Their partnership had become a source of strength, a quiet assurance that together they could face whatever life brought next. This stage of their story marked a turning point. It was no longer just about mutual curiosity or tentative friendship. It was about standing together in the face of challenges, supporting each other without expectation, and building a foundation that could endure. The bond they shared had moved from possibility to reality, laying the groundwork for the next chapter in their lives, a chapter that would be defined not by fear or doubt, but by courage, trust, and the steady presence of one another. The lessons of this period were clear. Life would always have hardships, but facing them with someone who understood, supported, and respected you made them bearable. Trust, patience, and shared effort created a bond stronger than words alone could convey. And for both the rancher and the Apache woman, this experience left them ready to face the future together, with confidence in their partnership and hope for what was yet to come. The bond between the rancher and the Apache woman had grown steadily over time, moving from cautious conversations to trust forged through shared challenges. By this point, both had learned a great deal about each other, not just the surface details of their lives, but the deeper truths about who they were and what they valued. And yet, life had more lessons in store, moments that would test not only their trust but their courage to fully embrace companionship. It began with the simple, ordinary rhythms of life. The rancher continued tending to his animals, fixing fences, and preparing for the changing seasons. The woman maintained her responsibilities within her community and family, supporting elders, helping with chores, and ensuring the younger generation learned what they needed. Their routines were demanding, and yet, in the quiet spaces between work, they found moments for each other. A shared cup of coffee in the morning, a brief conversation during supply runs, sitting together in the evening watching the land stretch into the horizon. These small moments, repeated over days and weeks, built a deep sense of comfort and familiarity. One day, a more serious challenge arose. A sudden injury occurred. One of the rancher's horses stumbled and fell, causing concern for its health and well-being. The rancher acted quickly, knowing the animal needed attention immediately. The Apache woman joined him without hesitation, her steady hands and calm presence helping him navigate the stressful situation. Together, they assessed the injury, worked to stabilize the horse, and made a plan for care. Their combined knowledge and effort prevented what could have been a serious loss, and the experience reinforced their sense of teamwork. After the horse was safe, they sat together on the edge of the pasture, exhausted but relieved. They shared a quiet laugh over the stress of the day, and in that moment, the rancher realized just how much he had come to rely on her presence. Not because she did things he could not do, but because her support made the burdens of life lighter and more manageable. The woman, in turn, felt a similar reassurance. She had spent so long handling everything alone, and now she felt the calm security of having someone beside her who could share both responsibility and concern. Their connection deepened further through small, meaningful actions. The rancher began noticing little details about her life, her favorite way to have breakfast, the way she preferred to organize tools, the quiet strength in her voice when discussing family matters. The woman, likewise, noticed the rancher's reliability, his careful thought in decisions, and his consistent presence. They communicated not only through words but through understanding, through gestures, through shared effort. Each act of care reinforced the bond between them, creating a foundation that could withstand life's uncertainties. As their companionship grew, so did the awareness that outside challenges still existed. Some people in the community were skeptical of their connection. Questions and whispers occasionally reached their ears. At first, the rancher felt uncomfortable, unsure how to respond. But the woman reminded him gently that their relationship was theirs, not subject to others' opinions. She had faced judgment before and had learned to remain grounded. With her guidance, he began to see that strength and partnership did not require validation from anyone else. Their focus was on each other, and that alone was enough. They also confronted personal fears together. The rancher sometimes worried that his life, so long lived in solitude, could not change to accommodate another person. He feared disappointment, both his own and hers. The woman worried about exposing vulnerability, about opening her heart only to face challenges or misunderstandings. They spoke openly about these fears, not avoiding them, not downplaying them. Through conversation, they learned that honesty was the key to overcoming hesitation. By sharing doubts, they lessened their weight and created space for trust to grow stronger. One afternoon, the woman invited the rancher to a place she loved, a quiet spot by a small creek surrounded by trees and wildflowers. It was a place of peace, away from work, responsibilities, and the watchful eyes of the community. They sat together by the water, watching the reflections of sunlight ripple across the surface. In that serene environment, the rancher realized just how much their relationship had transformed his life. The fear and loneliness he had carried for so many years felt lighter. He understood that companionship did not mean losing himself, but gaining someone to walk alongside him through the journey of life. The woman, too, felt a profound shift. For the first time in years, she felt seen not just as strong, capable, or responsible, but as a person who could be cared for and supported without conditions. Her heart, often guarded, began to relax. She understood that strength could coexist with vulnerability, and that partnership could mean shared burdens rather than isolation. In this moment, both recognized the depth of their bond and the quiet power of having each other. Life continued with its routine challenges, yet each day together strengthened their connection. The rancher and the woman worked side by side, repaired fences, tended livestock, and shared the ordinary tasks of rural life. But these tasks were now infused with meaning, as each act of effort carried an unspoken message of care and trust. Even small gestures, preparing a simple meal, offering water on a hot day, or lending a helping hand, became symbols of their growing devotion. Over time, they began to imagine a life together, not in dramatic fantasies, but in practical, achievable ways. They spoke of shared routines, mutual support, and continued respect for each other's independence. They discussed long-term plans for the ranch, for the care of animals, and for future moments together. These conversations, grounded in reality rather than imagination, revealed a deep understanding that their bond was more than fleeting. It was something they could build upon day by day. Eventually, they faced one of life's quiet, testing moments. A neighbor experienced a personal crisis, and both the rancher and the woman extended help. They coordinated logistics, offered support, and provided stability where it was needed. Their teamwork was seamless, reflecting not only their practical skills but the deep trust they had cultivated. Through this shared effort, they realized that their partnership was strong enough to navigate both expected and unexpected challenges. As the weeks and months passed, the rancher and the Apache woman came to a profound understanding. Love and companionship were not about dramatic gestures or idealized romance. They were about presence, trust, mutual respect, and the quiet assurance that someone would stand beside you in every moment, ordinary or extraordinary. Their relationship had evolved from cautious curiosity to true partnership, built on honesty, shared effort, and unwavering support. The final moments of their story reflect a life lived with balance. They sit together on the porch of the rancher's home, the sun setting over the open land. The wind moves gently through the grass, carrying the calm of the evening. There is no need for grand declarations or promises. Their bond is proven not through words, but through daily acts of trust, care, and understanding. The rancher feels a sense of peace he had not known in years, and the woman feels the quiet joy of being seen, valued, and supported. Their story does not end with perfection, for life never does. There are still challenges ahead, responsibilities to manage, and uncertainties to face. But they have found strength in partnership, courage in shared vulnerability, and comfort in knowing they are no longer alone. Together, they have built a life grounded in respect, trust, and love that is quiet yet profound. In the end, their journey shows that true companionship is not measured by grand gestures, wealth, or dramatic events. It is found in the simple, consistent acts of support and understanding, in the willingness to face fears together, and in the courage to share one's life honestly with another. The rancher and the Apache woman discovered that by standing together, they could navigate life's hardships, celebrate its small joys, and find peace in each other's presence. Their story is a reminder that love and partnership grow not in haste or convenience, but in patience, respect, and daily commitment. It is a tale of quiet resilience, shared trust, and the transformative power of companionship. And in that quiet, steady bond, both the rancher and the Apache woman found a home, not just on the land they cared for, but in each other's hearts, where they would continue their journey, side by side, ready to face whatever life had in store.